I'm going to talk to you for just a few minutes about activity completion. This is a very useful feature in Moodle because what it allows you to do is to track at a glance what activities students have completed. It also lets you decide when a student can be considered to have completed an activity. So I'm going to walk you through this. First thing we have to do is we have to actually turn activity completion on. And the way you do that is in the course settings. So you have to go down to your administration section on the left. And you're going to look under course administration. And you're going to click edit settings. These are the settings for the entire course. Okay, so up at the top you'll see the typical thing with the name and category, things like that for the course, but down at the bottom you'll see some other options that are not expanded by default. We're going to look for the one that says completion tracking, and we're going to simply click that and we're going to turn it on. Save our changes, and now our completion tracking is on. Now I've already put my course into editing mode with the button up here, so I'm seeing right now the checkboxes out to the right that tell me which activities have been completed. As the teacher, I've already gone through and looked at all these, so I've completed them. That's why they have the check. What I'm going to do now is show you how to set what the criteria are to show that an activity has been completed. And the way you do that is you edit the individual assignment. So I'm going to start with this assignment, which is write an essay. Now, I'm going to go into the edit settings, and in much the same way as we saw the little expandable sections down here, you'll notice that there's one called activity completion. And when I roll that down, I see that the option by default is usually going to be something like do not indicate activity completion. I have a couple other options. One is students can manually mark the activity as completed. And I'm going to pick that one to start with just to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. So now the way this will work is the student will actually get a checkbox that he or she can check or uncheck manually. Now you don't see this right now because I'm in teacher mode, but I can go down and say switch role to student. And you'll see that that's how this is going to look. There's a checkbox, and if I check it, I've manually completed. This is good for optional activities or perhaps activities where you can trust the students to say accurately whether they've completed it or not. Okay, so let me switch back to my normal role. We're going to turn editing back on, and I'm going to show you another option for completion. So normally you'll not want to use the students can manually mark. Instead, we're going to say show activities complete when certain conditions are met. This is the one you'll probably use a lot of times. Each type of activity allows you to pick what criteria you can use to mark it as complete. In this case, since I've said it's complete with conditions are met, I have to set those conditions. So one of them, the simplest one, is require view. This simply means all the student has to do for it to be marked complete is to open it. This is good when it's just a reading material or a link to a video. You can also require that it has a grade. That means this may be an activity where they had to submit a paper to you, and eventually you're going to go in the grade book and put a grade in for it. Or the student actually has to just submit an activity. So in other words, they have to submit the file, and that marks it as complete automatically before you grade it. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and mark this, and the student must view this activity to complete it. And I'm going to hit save and return to course, and now that one is set up so that the student cannot check it manually. It will only become checked when they've completed it by opening it and looking at it. So now we're going to take a look at what activity completion options are available for a quiz. You'll notice it's a little different. This time when I drop this down and say that show activities complete when conditions are met, now I can have the activity to view it, or I can say students must receive a grade. You notice we haven't talked about this one yet. You can actually say give them an expected completion date so that they'll be able to see when you expect them to have this done by. Now the final type of activity that we're going to look at is a discussion forum, and you'll probably end up using these a lot because not only can you post discussions, but as you've seen before, you can attach files. So with a news forum, the discussion forum, it actually gives you a lot of options on activity completion. So You can either require view, as we've discussed before, or require grade, or you can actually require a certain number of posts. So when a student starts a discussion, that's a requires discussion. So if I wanted the students to just start one discussion, I would check this box and I would say start one. You may actually want to require students to read and respond to a certain number of posts by the other students. And you can do that by checking this box and saying 3. So in this case, students will have to start their own discussion and then go and find 3 other replies, find 3 other posts that other students have made and actually post a reply to each of those. This is a very valuable way to monitor discussion board use for your students. You can also, instead of checking these, you can use this generic one where it says require posts. That basically means they either have to post to a new discussion or reply to an existing one, and you can set the number for that as well. So if I set that to 4, that means they could either start 4 discussions, reply to 4 discussions, or do a combination of them. So now that I've shown you how to set this activity completion tracking up, I can show you that you can actually go and see at a glance how all this is going, and that's very useful. It's down here over in administration, in course administration under reports. And if you'll look when you expand the reports, one of the reports you can do is activity completion. And when you check that, you will actually get a list of students. I only have one student in this class. His name is Fake Student. And it will show you which activities this student has completed. This is very useful because when you see the students all laid out, you basically get a series of boxes across showing you which activities are complete for which students and which aren't. So that is activity completion, a very useful tool for keeping track of where your students are at in their assignments. Thank you.